Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Walk him off.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Medium Large Sports Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Anthony Witrado. Tuesday nights, we're back. Jeff and Anthony, we had a rough March or February, I should say, as far as Tuesdays, but we're both here. Tons to talk about. Spring training officially in the books. Anthony, are you convinced? Are the Dodgers the greatest team ever based on a 12-8 spring training record or whatever they finished?
I don't even know why they're playing the season. I mean, it's wrapped up.
Yeah, just lock it up. Dave Roberts extended the Dodgers at one point, won 8 in a row in spring training. I've seen enough. You know, all the hype is real, Anthony. All of our greatest expectations have been confirmed. I'm with you. Let's just fast forward to the end of the season and let's start the parade.
Let's just do the parade. Yeah, it's fine.
Lots to get to today. We are going to talk baseball. We are going to talk spring training. We've got news about who the Dodgers' fifth starter is. We've got another starting pitcher injured, unfortunately, unsurprisingly. And then I want to kind of do a deep dive on two Dodgers pitchers, the two guys, in fact, that we'll see next for the Dodgers in real Major League games, Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Roki Sasaki, both of whom who had great performances over the past couple of days. And then we'll get to some news and notes. Hyeseong Kim, James Outman, Blake Snell, Clayton Kershaw, and more. But let's start with the news. Anthony, there was a battle all spring long for the fifth starter spot between Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin. There was debate about, well, maybe it would just be Gonsolin because he's had more success as a starter and May might be available and useful as a reliever. Turns out this kind of sorted itself out because Dustin May has been named the fifth starter, in part, at least, because Tony Gonsolin is injured. He hurt his back lifting weights, Anthony, and he will begin the season on the injured list. He only made 2 appearances, Gonsolin did, and hasn't appeared since February 26th. So before we get to the May piece of this, Gonsolin, a guy who has of late struggled with injuries. We haven't seen him in a while. How big of a deal is it that he will begin the season on the injured list?
I don't think it's a huge deal, especially if the injury is something that happened when he was lifting and it's not related to, the elbow or anything like that. Fine with it. Said it before when we were talking about some of these battles. These things tend to sort of work themselves out as the spring goes along. I thought May could be the guy just based on like the Dodgers have to figure out what they have in him. Yeah. And we've had this discussion before. He's getting the spot, but it's sort of, almost by default, but it's not like that. It's not like he's been terrible and they're having to give the spot to a guy who's been awful. He's been fine. And I think there's still a ton of promise there. I think if he's healthy, even coming off the injury, he's got the potential and the talent, I think, even coming off the injury, to be the best 5th, 6th starter, however we end up deciding it goes with this rotation in baseball. He's got that much talent. He's been that good in the past for stretches. This is where the depth finally starts to show itself, right?
Yeah. What's interesting with May, because I want to turn our attention there, he's obviously going to be the 5th starter. He will not be traveling to Japan because he's going to stay back in Arizona in order to prepare himself for that 5th start. He's made 3 spring appearances. He got up to 3 innings, 1 hit, no runs, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts his last time out. And Dustin May is a fascinating case study in a lot of ways, Anthony, because the one thing that I know every single person that's watching our show, myself, yourself included, can agree on is that Dustin May is nasty. It's the Matthew Moreno eye test tells you that his 2-seamer moves at a velocity that very few guys, even at Major League Baseball level, can make a baseball move. He's filthy. And yet, what I think is so baffling to me about Dustin May is that we just haven't seen it necessarily fully materialize at the Major League level. His career ERA is 3.10, that's pretty good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's pretty good. 3.77 is the fielding independent pitching FIP, which is sort of a predictive number. But part of this is because he's only thrown 191 innings in 6 years, Anthony. In 6 years, 191 innings. He's never thrown more than 56 innings in a season since being called up in 2019. He has never been optioned to the minors. So it's 191 innings, and every other inning he has missed is not because he got sent down. It's but because he's been injured. And we haven't seen him since 2023. I'll add this, Anthony. The last time we saw him in 2023, his strikeout rates per 9 innings, this was in 48 innings, his strikeouts per 9 was 6.38. That was a career worst mark for a guy who has struggled to generate strikeouts despite the nasty stuff. So clearly you're high on him. I'm not saying I'm not. But what would you say is the argument for optimism with Dustin May in spite of kind of the checkered history we've seen from him over the last 6 years?
Yeah. Checkered for me might be strong. I think the checkering is health and the lack of strikeouts. But even with the lack of strikeouts, he's prevented runs.
Yeah.
And so, I was looking at this yesterday, or I think it was yesterday. Ironically, the season that he's made the most starts, 10, was the COVID shortened 2020 season.
Yes.
So go figure. But beyond looking at something else, I was looking at his ERA plus, which for Baseball Reference is the equivalent to like
weighted runs
whatever.
created plus.
Yeah, weighted runs created plus kind of deal. Anyway, in his worst season, aside from 2022, he was 15% better than replacement level. So I mean, he's been very good, and at his best in that season when he made the most starts, he had a 170 ERA plus, 156 the year after that. So I think to say like, what is there to be optimistic about? The stuff plays at this level. You would like to see some more swing and miss, obviously, and hopefully that part can come. It's just the health. It's just can he stay on the mound for, let's call it 20 starts? Because I really don't know how many of these pitchers, aside from maybe Snell, Yamamoto, and Glass now, even come close to like 25.
Yeah.
So, if he can give them 20 starts and that's the kind of production he's going to get, like I said, he's head and shoulders the best back of the rotation pitcher in baseball, aside from maybe like guys on his own staff.
Yeah. Well, and that's the key, right? Because if the question, which is reality, we're talking about the 5th starter, is Dustin May a capable 5th starter? Unanimously, of course he is. I think if you're a Dodgers fan, the guy that we want to be plugging into that 5 hole is more like a number 3 starter. And that's where the questions are for me is, can Dustin May be that good? There's not really a developmental story here necessarily.
Sure.
He made his major league debut in 2019. So yes, he's been injured, but he's been at the major league level in 5 of 6 seasons. The 6th season he missed due to injury. And to your point, the only checkering is injuries, which have nothing to do with how good he is when he's actually on the mound, and strikeouts. I mentioned it, 6.38. The last time we saw him over 48 innings, he was striking out less than 6.5 guys per 9, which is a massive issue. Obviously, my stance has always been, Anthony, if he can prevent runs, I don't care. Like, strikeouts are great, but I would rather have a low K per 9 and a low ERA than a guy who gets a million strikeouts, but 4.5 ERA. So sure. I'm with you. I'm optimistic, confident. But if Dustin May were plugging into like the number 3 spot in this rotation, would you be equally as confident in his ability to match that standard?
Given the lack of innings he has, I would not be as confident in the rotation.
Yeah.
I would be equally as confident in him being able to produce. But I think if he slotted in as like a number 3 starter, let's say behind Yamamoto and Glass now, maybe they don't have Snell, right? Like something like that. I'm a little less optimistic on what this rotation can be long-term. And that's to say, like, I think they're the best rotation in baseball by a pretty good margin. And if it was May at number 3, they're like the best rotation in baseball, and it's maybe a little more arguable.
Yeah.
It's something like that. So I think given his spot in the rotation, there's a ton of upside there. I really think his stuff plays as long as he can keep the ball in his hand. This is a good problem to have. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I'm with you. TQT adds Dustin May's career strikeout rate is 22%. Gonsolin's career rate is 23%. Both guys have basically identical ERAs. It's like 3.1 to 3.19 as well. And so it's just interesting. These are the things that crack me up because we look at the eye test and Dustin May compared to Tony Gonsolin feels like we're talking about two completely different universes of pitchers when it comes to stuff. And yet over the course of careers, we're talking about guys who in very different ways have essentially gotten the same results when it comes to limiting damage and striking guys out. Again, this decision made, as far as we know, in part, at least because Tony Gonsolin hit the injured list. Dustin May have won the job anyways. But for now, Gonsolin will start the season on the injured list and Dustin May will take the number 5 spot.
Yeah. And I think the thing here is that because the K rate stuff, like I've never pointed that as a reason why like Gonsolin over May or whatever. Yeah, like, totally. I picked May from early on for different reasons. It's that Gonsolin has like 180 more innings, than May does. And so, which just brings up the biggest concern with him is, can he stay healthy enough to give them what they need during the course of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. And with Tony Gonsolin, it's interesting because I think he's sort of slowly developing a reputation as an injury-prone guy, but it's worth pointing out that he's missed all of the 2024 season. But prior to that, he had actually been a relatively durable guy. He had back-to-back seasons over 100 innings for the Dodgers at the major league level, and had obviously been in the minor leagues before that. So unfortunate, but again, to your point, I think you made the most important thing, not arm related, the injury to Tony Gonsolin. It's a back injury. And if they're telling us the truth that it's a back injury in weightlifting, that's good news for the Dodgers. Let's shift gears here. Let's talk about another pitcher that threw a couple days ago, and it's a guy by the name of Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And my question to you, Anthony, is, are people sleeping on Yoshinobu Yamamoto? His last spring outing, 5 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts on Monday. He is going to get the ball on opening day in the Tokyo series in Japan for the Dodgers. Let me throw some numbers at you with Yamamoto that lead me to believe, Anthony, that maybe we should be talking more about this guy, that he might be the one who's getting lost in the mix of Snell and Glasnow and Sasaki, etc. He got shelled in his first start last season. I believe it was 5 earned runs in 1 inning. If you take away just that one start, he finished with a 2.53 ERA last year, a 2.5 FIP, a 10.4 strikeouts per 9 across 17 starts. Among guys who threw at least as many innings as he did, only 6 had a better ERA than Yoshinobu Yamamoto last season. This is rookie season coming over, Anthony. And so we're talking about a guy that, yes, was limited. He missed 3 months with what was at one point classified as a rotator cuff injury, then reclassified as a triceps injury. He misses 3 months, but across nearly 90 innings, he has the 7th best ERA in Major League Baseball, which leads me to believe in year 2, I'm only expecting growth and improvement from a guy who was already very, very good last year.
Yeah. I think that he is being slept on a little bit in that, and the reasons for that being maybe the lack of innings from last season.
Yeah.
The fact that he was still sort of being held back a little bit, even in October.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff may come into play here, but in terms of raw stuff, in terms of where his polish level is at as a major leaguer, in terms of what we've seen from him on huge stages, not just in October too. I think in that way, yeah, like maybe people don't realize what this guy actually was last year when he did take the ball. I think if he's one of the guys that can give them around 25 starts this season,
yeah,
he's got a legitimate case, or I should say he's going to have a legitimate shot at being the Cy Young winner in the National League. I really do think that. I think that people look at Glasnow and look at Snell, and then they'll eventually look at Ohtani when he starts to throw in the big leagues. With all of that, it might be Yamamoto who comes out as the best guy of this staff.
Yeah,
I truly believe he's got that kind of potential. And if that's the case, then he is going to shock a whole bunch of people who are just sort of maybe casual baseball fans, because it's not often that you can say that the highest paid pitcher in Major League Baseball is like sort of overlooked or like ignored almost because I think maybe just people don't know enough about him.
Yeah, if you were placing bets for who throws the most innings among Dodgers starting pitchers this year, Yamamoto would be an interesting bet because I don't think anybody's betting on Glass now. I think Snell's probably the favorite just because he's most likely to go deep into games and maybe you believe in the health. But Yamamoto would probably be second on that list for me because of what I imagine is going to be an innings limit for Roki Sasaki, injuries to Ohtani and Kershaw, obviously Dustin May's checkered history, etc. Here's the one concern I have with Yamamoto, and let me rephrase that. This is not a concern I have, but I think if there was a reason for concern, his last 6 starts last year, including the postseason, Anthony, he had an ERA of nearly 5. So yes, he misses 3 months. He comes back. He makes 4 starts in the regular season, 4 starts in the postseason. Of those 8, the last 6, an ERA of nearly 5. Is that just, hey, he was injured, then we're talking about the biggest stage, the best teams, etc., and do we write that off? Or is there any concern that struggling at the end of the year might linger into 2025?
With that came some dynamic starts, though.
Yeah.
Thrown in there, including what he did in Game 2 of the World Series, where he one-hit the Yankees over the course of, I think, 5, struck out, I don't know, 8 or 9 or something like that, if I remember correctly. And the only run was a Juan Soto, or was it Soto who hit the home run on him? Anyway, he looked essentially untouchable in that start on a massive stage. So, I think it was probably a combination of him coming back, trying to get right, all of that kind of stuff. And the one thing that really has impressed me about him is, even though he might not have had his best stuff, including going into the postseason, including going into the World Series, was that whenever he took the ball in like a big time spotlight game, he produced.
Yeah.
And that's not something that comes easy, I think, all the time to younger pitchers, especially guys who are rookies and guys who did not necessarily grow up in this country in this sporting culture, et cetera, et cetera. Not that the Japan baseball culture is anything less. It's exceptional. But you know what I mean? Like that's the highest level at the highest stage. And he took the ball and he produced.
Yeah.
And so I think going into this season, feeling healthy, he has that kind of confidence. I think he probably takes that ball and he believes that he is good enough to dominate any lineup that baseball has to throw at him.
Yeah. Game 2, by the way, 6 1/3, 1 hit, 1 run, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks. It was a Juan Soto home run in the 3rd inning of that game. So to your point, hey, if someone's going to point out the last 6 starts that he made, let's just focus on the last start he made on the biggest stage. An unbelievable performance for him. Peyton with the super chat says, last year was Yoshi's test run through the majors. If he did as great as he did last year, he's only going to get more deadly. Do you buy into this? Is it he's 25, 26 years old, I think, at this point, and it's only going to get better? Or is there a part of you that's like, is the scouting report going to be more out on him, and maybe he'll do about the same, but expecting improvement is a stretch?
Yeah. I think that I think expecting improvement is the expectation, and it's a real one.
Yeah.
Yes, there is, now better scouting reports on him, et cetera, et cetera. Some teams have gotten looks at him, sure. But he's also now a guy who knows what it's like to be on that stage, pitch in the major leagues, understands what hitters will try to do, the kinds of adjustments they may try to make. So not only will, baseball after like a breakout kind of season, and let's just say that was it for him, like, because, he had flashes where he was great.
Yeah.
He was a rookie. He was technically a rookie. It's about the adjustments teams make to that player and the adjustments that player makes in return, right? I think he's smart enough, and I think his stuff is good enough that when that happens, you're going to still see him be able to get guys out the way he was last season, and probably even at a better rate, at a better run prevention rate, maybe a better strikeout rate as well, than he did as a rookie. I really do think that if he's healthy, he has a legitimate shot to be a top 3 Cy Young candidate.
Yeah, I was just looking up the odds here a minute ago. He's currently has the 11th best odds in the National League. He's got two teammates ahead of him. Snell's 10-1, Glasnow's 17-1. Paul Skeens the favorite at 3-1. Those are insane odds on a season-long pitcher to stay healthy and to be that awesome. But if you want some Yamamoto disrespect, he is tied in odds with Logan Webb. Just throwing that out there for anybody that's looking for a slight. I think Yamamoto's ERA is going to start with a 2 this year. I think he's going to be very good. I think the points we talked about earlier, just expecting better health as well from him, is fairly reasonable. So if he can get to 25 starts, if he can post an ERA that begins with a 2, then I think to your point, we're talking about a guy who's at least going to be in the mix for the Cy Young conversation. At the midway point, he could be in the All-Star game conversation. And look, he's going to be on a big stage in Japan on opening day. I'm not going to say everybody's going to be watching because it's 6 a.m. on the East Coast and 3 a.m. on the West Coast. But in Japan, lots of people will be watching. You can imagine for a guy like that, this is going to be a World Series-esque level of pressure pitching in his native country for the Dodgers against Imanaga, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if he can come out and have a good performance there and just let that momentum build over the 2 weeks until his next start, then watch out.
In his head, for him personally, he might not make a bigger start this season than the first one he gets.
Yeah.
And it's a testament, I think, to what he was able to do last year under the bright lights, but also like he's going to make that start. And then essentially in one season and one start as a major leaguer. Yeah. He's seen just about every big kind of stage that he can possibly see, aside from maybe like starting an all-star game or something like that, right? Which maybe he does that this year too.
Cordanas with a couple betting questions for us. He says, BetMGM has Yoshi at 80-1 to lead the league in strikeouts, and then the Dodgers to win 117 or more games at 10-1. Do you like these odds? The Yoshi odds I don't like. 80-1 is tasty, but I think he was like 20th in Major League Baseball in strikeout rate last year. So you're projecting an improvement in his strikeout rate. You're projecting a lot of innings, a lot of health, and with guys like Paul Skeens, even Blake Snell, etc., available. I just don't know if Yamamoto is going to get enough innings and have a high enough strikeout rate for the first one. As for 117 wins, it's a lot of wins. I'm on record as I think it's going to be in like 110, I think is in play. But 117, 10-1, maybe. But I just don't know if there's going to be enough urgency from the Dodgers down the stretch, Anthony, to push it towards 115, 16, 17 wins.
Yeah, I don't know that. I'm with you on the wins. I think 105 to 110 is a realistic, possibility. It probably isn't going to take that many to win the division. Yeah. Like, kind of steadily. But beyond that, like anything that is a counting stat bet for the Dodger starters, don't fall into that trap, I would say. Yeah. Because maybe aside from Snell, none of these guys are going to have a long enough leash to rack up counting stats in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Get ready for some phantom IL stints for the Dodgers, and not to mention 6-man rotation. So even if they were healthy all season, you're losing a number of starts. We appreciate the super chats. Thank you to Peyton. Thank you to Cordenas. We appreciate you. Let's talk about another pitcher, the guy who threw today. And that's a gentleman you may have heard of by the name of Roki Sasaki. Not even on the 40-man roster, Anthony. This guy is basically a nobody. So far this spring, 7 innings, 3 hits, no runs, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts in 2 spring starts. It's cliche to say he's as advertised. Somehow I think he's in some ways better than advertised because I just can't believe he's this good this quickly. Yes, it's spring training. I get all of that. He's had 12 swings on his splitter, Anthony, and 11 of them have been misses. I'm going to get into some of the numbers on the splitter specifically, but how impressed have you been with Sasaki in the 2 spring starts that we've gotten to see him? 1 start and the other was a relief appearance.
Yeah. I'm with you in that the spring stats, like what his lines look like, they don't mean anything to me. Yeah. I'm just looking at what he looks like on the mound from a poise perspective and what his stuff looks like. And we talked about after his first outing that the poise really stuck out to me. I might have been on with Matt that night, but that was what sort of stuck out to me, was that he looked like he had been on that stage before. And even though it was just the Cactus League, he did not carry himself like a rookie.
No.
And so there was that, and that was impressive. And then in these 2 outings, again, because I'm not caring about the numbers and I want to see the stuff. That splitter really does look like it has a chance to be the best pitch in baseball.
Yeah.
Like the most lights out pitch, the best finishing pitch, like that kind of stuff. That splitter right now, I mean, it's elite now. And
let me give you some numbers on this. And I want to give a shout out to Jacob Brownson on Twitter, because he did a thread on this pitch, the RPMs and that kind of thing. And I'll just give you the highlights, because when it's one thing to watch it, but then to read this, you kind of get an understanding of why it is as effective as it is. So he said, what makes his splitter unique is a few things. First and foremost, sometimes it moves left and sometimes it moves right. If you look at the pitch chart, it doesn't always go the same direction. Sometimes it's arm side run and sometimes it's cut. And so if you watch the pitch grading, oftentimes in real time, it's getting marked as a slider because it cuts. And they're like, splitters don't move like that. Well, that's because it's Sasaki's. Now, why does it move left and right sometimes? Because the RPM on it, rotations per minute, per meter, is 500. Okay. It's one of the lowest spin rates in the league. A normal splitter is 1,000 to 1,500 RPMs. His is 500, which is essentially making it an 86-mile-an-hour knuckleball is what he's throwing.
Yeah.
So it's an 86-mile-an-hour knuckleball. And let me give you one more number on this, because this is the craziest one, to give you like actual inches as far as what this pitch is doing from the moment that it leaves his hand. In his first appearance, he had one splitter that dropped from the time it left his hand. It dropped 37 inches and cut 5 inches. Okay, so it drops 3 feet and moves to the left 5 inches. In the same appearance, he threw a different splitter that dropped 48 inches, so a full 11 inches more, 4 feet it drops, and it ran arm side 6 inches. So if you just put these 2 pitches next to each other, you've got 2 pitches, same pitch, same pitcher. There's an 11-inch difference in drop. So even if you know splitter, and even if you've got figured out the drop, you're going to miss it by a foot. And oh, by the way, 11 inches from left to right where these 2 pitches landed. The same guy throwing it. And if you're guessing, he's also got 96, 97 on the fastball. So again, shout out to Jacob Brownson for pointing that out. But an 86-mile-an-hour knuckleball, Anthony, that has an 11-inch variance in how much it drops vertically and an 11-inch variance in how much it moves left to right. I don't even know what the hell you're supposed to do. He could tell you it's coming and nobody would know what to do with it.
Yeah. It comes out hot enough on the radar gun. It comes out from the same slot, and it immediately throws the brakes on.
Yeah.
And in that first outing, I think it was Fiducia who caught him, maybe, if I remember correctly.
Could be, I'm not sure.
Whoever it was, there were maybe 3 of those where the glove was here or the glove was wherever, and the glove moved to where the catcher thought it was going to end up, and it had to come back the other way, and he almost missed it. So it played, like, to your point, it plays closer to a knuckleball than anything really outside of the velocity.
But 86, but yeah, it's an 86-mile-an-hour knuckleball.
Right. And so you look at something like that, and what that does tell me too is that while he can break it to both sides, he probably can't control pitch to pitch which side it goes on, which fine, not a big deal. That's not a big deal. But that means the hitter also has no damn clue which way it's going to drop, even if they do recognize it. That's the other thing too, is that if a guy happens to pick it up and go, okay, that's this pitch, and let's say he's got 2 strikes on him and it looks close enough that he's got to pull the trigger on it, he doesn't know if that ball's breaking outside left or outside or to the right.
Yeah.
And so it makes it such a devastating pitch. And like you said, the drop on that thing is wicked. That's one wicked part of it. But the fact that it moves horizontally as well is just absolutely gross. And that's why I'm saying, like, this pitch has the potential and very well may be now, like after start number 1 in Japan, to be the best pitch in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, look, 12 swings and 11 whiffs on the pitch this spring, and you kind of pointed it out. The key here in all of this is, can he throw it for strikes? Can he force guys to respect it and have to actually not see it out of hand and be like, this thing's dropping below the zone. I don't need to touch it. That's going to be the key here. And part of it is he extends way out, so they've got less time to figure it out. Again, if they're sitting on 96, 97 mile hour fastball, especially if the velocity ticks up, all those factors. But if he can force guys to be honest on that pitch, they're going to have no chance. Once they're swinging, they're missing every single time.
Yeah. And I think the key to that last part you said, is probably him developing a serviceable third pitch.
Yeah.
I don't think he can live the entire season on just the 2 pitches. I mean, for a 2-pitch pitcher, he can be incredibly good for a guy who only does that. But I think for him to be able to go deeper into games, for him to be more efficient, for him to keep a high swing and miss rate on that pitch, he's going to have to develop something that at least gives them a look at a third pitch, whether that be the curveball, whether it be the slider, something like that. Something to just keep guys honest. It doesn't even have to be a great pitch. It just has to be there for him.
Yeah. The scouting report from Jonathan May over at MLB.com is that the third pitch is, in fact, a slider. Some scouts have the slider as an above average graded pitch, if not plus. So we'll see. Again, it's hard to know how much he's been throwing it because they grade it as a slider and then they move it to a splitter. I don't think we've really seen maybe more than 3. I think 3 or 4 maybe got graded as sliders today, but that would have been about it.
Yeah, and I think there has been some confusion on it. So like it's almost hard to say how good that slider might be because I think sometimes they miss on what it was that he actually threw.
Yeah. From 2024, they had it rated as he was throwing the fastball 46% of the time, split finger 27% of the time, and slider 27% of the time. So could be something the Dodgers have tweaked. Could be they say like, hey, let's just focus on these 2 pitch, get them dialed in, and we'll figure out the slider later. But crazy stuff from Roki Sasaki so far this spring. And the other piece here is that Roki Sasaki has officially been named the number 2 starter in Japan. So he will start game 2. I believe Justin Steele is the expected opponent in that one, but game 2 against the Cubs will be Roki Sasaki.
Yeah. This is going to be lit.
It's going to be electric. It's going to be electric.
Say.
Let's get to a couple super chats. Laura, we appreciate it. She said prediction for the Japan series. Anthony Yamamoto game 1, Sasaki game 2. Are you going to do anything less than 2 games for the Dodgers and 0 for the Cubs?
I mean, aside from the Dodgers coming out of this 2-0, I'll say Yamamoto gives them 5 innings, 1 run. Okay. And I will say Sasaki gives them 4 innings, 2 runs, but he looks dominant aside from however those 2 runs come across. I'll say that. I think that seems fair.
I'm also going to say the Dodgers beat the Cubs, who I don't think are all that good, twice. And if I was going to give you a bold prediction, I'll say Ohtani hits a pair of home runs in this series. He just feels like every time the pressure's on him and everybody's watching, he's just incredibly dialed in. So that's my there. And then Laura asks, are we on record for our 2025 win predictions? Stay tuned, Laura. We've got a few more shows this week. I'll be back on Thursday and then Sunday. So stay tuned. We're going to do some bold predictions later on. I've hinted at mine. I think it's going to be a big number. We both kind of made ours. You said you're in the 105 to 110 camp, and I would say I'm around 110 plus or minus, but starting at 110 would be my.
The game is on Wednesday morning.
Yeah, Tuesday morning and Wednesday morning.
Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning. All right, so may not see me maybe before that. So I will say tonight, lock me in at 106.
106. Okay, which is what they did a few years ago, right?
They won 105, right? And the Giants won 106? Is that what that was? Or was it 106, 107?
Let's see.
Is that the year you're talking?
Yeah. It was 106. Yeah, you're right. 106. They won. I'm sorry. They won 111 in 2022. So it was 106 in 21 and 111 in 22. They won 106 twice. 2019 they won 106, then 21 106, 22 111. So
okay, yeah. I go 106. I'll stick with 106. I think because of what you said earlier, I think they probably win the division by conservatively, I would say 8, 9, 10 games, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think there's no real push to the end of the season to worry about win total. They're going to be resting guys up, pitchers especially.
Yeah. Yeah. And I should clarify, I've said I think they set the franchise record for wins. So when I say 110 plus or minus, I guess we're going plus because I'm starting at 112. I think they have more than 111. So there you go. Okay, let's get to a little bit of a fun one here. Anthony, there was some off the field news for the Dodgers, and this appeals to a very specific segment of Dodger fans, and that is Fortnite has announced a pair of Shohei Ohtani skins. They've been added to Fortnite's Icon series starting on March 17th. You can purchase these 2 custom skins, one in a Dodgers uniform, one in a samurai suit. It involves a decoy backpack with a decoy bobblehead, as well as a custom pickaxe. We've got some slides here to show you. We've got decoy popping the ball up, and then a little ghost smiley face there. Here's the samurai suit that we mentioned. Shohei Ohtani cup as well. And then we've got Ohtani backwards, Velcro hat, Dodgers uniform, decoy bobblehead, a pickaxe, pitching machine, it looks like, of some sort. What are your thoughts on the most famous guy in MLB entering what is still one of the most popular games out there?
Yeah. This is pretty incredible. And I'll tell you why I think that. Major League Baseball for years, decades, probably since like
McGuire.
I was going to say Sosa, McGuire, but they did a pretty good job, even though with all the stuff and all the controversy around Bonds during his chases, they did a pretty good job of marketing the game then, and in particular, a player. Since then, it's been trash. It has been horrible, and I want to say at just about every outlet I've been at since like, the mid 2000s, I've written some sort of column about the lack of marketability that Major League Baseball has put on the table for its stars. Like, I made the argument that, like, at one point that if you had Kyle Kuzma walking through the mall, who was a mid NBA player at the time,
all due respect to former Lakers legend Kyle Kuzma,
still kind of is, and then you had at that time Mike Trout walking through the same mall, whatever, who was at the time not even close.
Yeah, he's one of the best players ever.
He was the best player in Major League Baseball. People would not know who Mike Trout was when they passed him, but they would know who Kyle Kuzma was. And it was a problem of how baseball marketed its players, especially its stars. And why this is important is because baseball still has this problem. They have not fixed it.
Yeah.
But Ohtani is such a transcendent athlete now. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's from Japan, and Japan does not play when it comes to their baseball stars, right?
Yeah.
And so when you take that into account, he's become a global superstar.
Yeah.
A guy who is recognized by non-sports fans as someone who's a celebrity. And I think when you have a baseball player who's able to cross that threshold there, of course, it's huge for Major League Baseball, but it just really points to how big of a legitimate superstar that person is. He is like like globally, like where, at least especially in countries where baseball is played, and obviously in Asia, he is Taylor Swift levels of famous.
Yeah,
he legitimately is. And I mean, to the point that his dog is in video games.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like that is. You know how famous you have to be for your pet to be famous?
Totally. And I mean, even in the United States, like obviously among Dodgers fans, it's one of the biggest brands. So it's kind of the perfect storm for MLB that you have this once in forever player who's arguably the best hitter in Major League Baseball, was the MVP as just a hitter. He also is one of the 5 to 10 best pitchers in Major League Baseball when he's healthy. He's young. He's massive. Like when you see him in person, you forget that he's like 6'5" and jacked. And so he's playing in LA, and the Dodgers know what they're doing from a marketing perspective. And he's, globally, because he's an international player, he has the whole combination. And so again, these Fortnite skins figure to be a massive deal. Do you have a favorite one here? Are you more Dodgers backwards hat Shohei Ohtani, or are you more of a samurai Shohei Ohtani guy, Anthony?
Given what this is for, I love the samurai stuff.
Yeah.
Like that plays for me. And you know what? The samurai stuff is cool too, because this is a cultural thing, and not meaning just like his Japanese culture. I mean like cultural in that like Fortnite is a game that is also worldwide famous, right?
Yeah.
Like played by millions of people. They have leagues, they have events in Vegas, like all that kind of stuff with this video game. I've never played it, but for everyone who has, what's the percentage of people who you think are baseball players, right?
Yeah.
And so while the Dodger one is cool, like most of the people are probably going to play it in the samurai outfit who choose him because it's cool, it's different. But the fact that the Dodger uniform is out there in that world, crossing a cultural barrier, huge for the brand, for the Dodger brand. And when we talked about like that $700 million being made back by the organization within, maybe less than 5 years at this point, like that stuff's real, man. Like that was not an exaggeration. Like this is crossing bounds that Major League Baseball has not done before.
Yeah, exactly what you said is why I would go Dodgers jersey as my favorite one, just because to see a Dodgers jersey in a game that has nothing to do with baseball is awesome. I love the backwards hat. I love the whole deal. So again, that will be available, folks, on March 17th as part of Fortnite's Icon series. So you can check that out. Okay, we've got a super chat here. Peyton says, can we nickname Shohei, Yoshi, and Roki as the three samurai? Kind of like what do you think, Anthony? Do these guys, there's a lot of calls for nicknames for these three. And look, nobody loves a nickname better than me. Some have said I'm the best at giving out nicknames that has ever been, at least on this show. But what do you think? Three samurai?
What was when we were kids, what was the karate movie with the three
the three ninjas?
The three ninjas, yeah. Maybe it's the three ninjas. I don't know. I mean,
all time, one of my all-time favorite movies. Rocky, Colt, Tum Tum. Come on now. Three Ninjas, an absolute classic.
I do think that we can get more creative than three samurai or three ninjas, though.
Yeah, we'll see. I saw somebody said for who was it? Yamarai. I saw somebody for Yamamoto, kind of the Yamamoto and samurai smashed together. I thought that was pretty good.
Okay.
So there you go. Yeah, somebody pointed out ninjas might be bad guys. That's true. I never, honestly, on all this stuff, I mean, who knows? I'll let somebody else come up with it for now. Another super chat here from Godfrey. He said, late to the chat, not sure if the CT3 situation, but they've got to give his roster spot to Bodie. He has been given plenty of opportunity and failed. Let's get into this because I did want to get into what the Dodgers are going to do. So great question, Godfrey, and we will dive right in. Let's get to some news and notes from today. Dave Roberts post-game shared a bunch of updates on the roster. First key one is that Hyeseong Kim will not travel to Japan with the Dodgers. Instead, he will begin the season in AAA, where he's given extra time to develop. Paired with that, James Outman, it has been revealed, will be on the travel roster to Japan. We don't exactly know what that means. There's going to be a couple exhibition games as well. Doesn't mean he's made the roster. But those are the first two pieces of information we have. David Bodie mentioned, also optioned to minor league camp. So he will begin the season in AAA as well. Blake and I had a long, great discussion, I thought, on Sunday night about how the Dodgers were going to handle the last spot on the bench / the last spot in the lineup. Bodie is out. Kim is out. That leaves us with Taylor, Kike Hernandez, James Outman, and Andy Pages. Given what you've seen, what you know, who would you guess is most deserving of that final spot? In the lineup, because obviously Pages and Outman are fighting for a roster spot. Kike and Chris Taylor will be on the roster because they can't be optioned, but may not necessarily be the starter.
So putting them all in the bucket of like just
those four, Who do you think is like in the first 2 weeks of the season? Who do you think gets the most starts out of Outman, Pages, Kike, or Chris Taylor?
Okay, I like that. I would say Pages right now.
Okay, and tell me why. He was last on Blake's list, by the way, 6th out of 6.
Yeah, he also had Bodie somewhere higher than I would have had.
Hey, I like Bodie too.
But that's fine. But there's a reason why he was signed to the deal that he was signed to. I think that they've seen what he can do. They think there is improvement there offensively. They think that he can be serviceable in center field, I think. And we've seen them more often than not during this latest run opt for offense more than defense. And so that's why I think we can argue about who does quote unquote deserves it more.
Yeah.
I think that those are the reasons why the team may go Pages, and why that would be my prediction. I mean, if we're going strictly on who deserves it based on spring training, like Bodie would be on this team, right? Like,
yeah.
So, I don't think that necessarily so much factors into it at spring training. Those numbers are what they are. But that would be my prediction on out of that group who gets the most starts over the first 2-3 weeks of the season.
It'll be interesting because I agree with you. They've seemed to prioritize offense. I wonder if at the level of our the guy who's going to be the 9th best offensive player in the lineup, which Pages or Outman or Kike or whoever is going to be the worst offensive player in the lineup. And at a position potentially like center field, if we're talking Outman versus Pages, if they would kind of adjust their plan and say, hey, if we're talking about two guys that we have serious questions about, and one guy, it's the bat was league average last year, the defense is below average, and the base running's a disaster, versus a guy who had a bat last year that was well below average, but we know the glove is plus to plus plus, and who has some speed as well. Like, I wonder if they just opt for Outman. I'm Mr. Spring training doesn't matter. I've always had the caveat, if we're talking about a position battle and a couple young guys that need to prove themselves, I think it matters a little bit. Outman's got an OPS over 800 this spring. So I'm not saying that like is the end all be all, but there has been separation in 30-ish at bats between Pages and Outman this spring offensively. And even if it's a push offensively, I think that's why Outman to me has the slight edge, because I think you can fall back on his defense at the very least and know that that's a guarantee that you're getting from James Outman.
So let me be clear here, because you make great points there. If I were choosing who gets that roster spot, Anthony Witrado,
yeah,
I'm taking Outman.
Okay.
I want the glove, especially with who are on the corners in the outfield. I want the glove, and I want a guy who can be able to run him down. And he showed that, like, you give him a regular starter's number of innings out there, like that glove is like Gold Glove potential
for
caliber,
sure.
I think.
Yeah.
If we're asking like what do we think is going to happen, for the reasons I gave is why I think they may go Pages.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'd probably personally go Outman. I lean towards Outman as well, partly because of everything I just said. I think maybe in center field, they're just going to value the defense. Maybe they've seen enough offensively. I know what the strikeout rate is. It's not great, but if you're getting extra base hits when you do make contact, which is what he's been doing, I think they'll live with it. And the other piece of this too is I think Outman, they're probably more comfortable. If one of these guys has to sit on the bench 3 days a week, I think they'd prefer it to be Outman and not Pages. They'd prefer Pages playing 6-7 days a week down in AAA, getting reps in center field, developing there. So that might be a little bit of a tiebreaker as well. As like, who are we comfortable not playing every day? I think that would favor Outman, maybe not for good reasons, but for actual reasons.
No, yeah, that's a good point too. And I think that however this shakes out, let's say Outman does spend a decent amount of time in the big leagues. I still think, however things shake out the rest of the spring, early in the season, I think when it's all said and done, Pages still has a pretty good number of plate appearances more than Outman does. And to your point about who do you want playing every day versus the other, and who are you more comfortable sitting, 3 times a week or whatever it might be. I think you're absolutely right. They want Pages playing, and for the reason that I think he ultimately ends up with more plate appearances, and he's probably a guy that they would probably want in the lineup more often than Outman.
Yeah, and if a corner outfield spot opened up, I think you'd see Pages every single day in either right field or left field,
I would
or
agree.
At least kind of on the heavy side of a platoon.
Yeah,
for sure. Okay, Blake Snell. Some more news and notes here. Dave Roberts was asked who would be making the domestic opening day home opener start, and he said he couldn't announce it, but basically David Vassay said, without saying it, he kind of said it was going to be Blake Snell. He said, quote, "It lines up with what everyone is expecting," was his answer to who's going to start. So any surprise to you that if it is Blake Snell who gets the domestic opening day, to you, is that he's the best pitcher on the team, or hey, Yamamoto and Sasaki got starts in Japan, and so we're going to give the next guy kind of in that group the home opener?
Yeah, I think it's the next guy in that group, the home opener. When they come back stateside, they're also looking at what the schedule looks like too.
Yeah.
And I haven't gone out this far to measure things, but it might be also that they're able to throw him on more regular rests.
Yeah.
This is a total guess because, like I said, I haven't even looked at what that kind of math would look like. But that's also a possibility, is that Snell is maybe the one guy potentially in that rotation that they would throw on regular rest, whereas everybody else would be pitching essentially in a 6-man rotation.
Yeah. The guys who pitch first and second stateside will need to pitch basically on normal rest. Excuse me. Only one. So you're right. They have 6 games in a row and then a day off. So whoever pitches game 1 in that one, so game 3 in the regular season, but the home opener would then be pitching, basically 5 days later. So I think that explains, to your point, why Blake Snell would make some sense there. Also, and afterwards, they have, I think the same thing repeats itself. So then they have 6 games in a row again. So basically, whoever your number 1 starter and whoever your number 2 starter, those 2 guys most likely will pitch on normal rest once in the first 2 weeks of season. While everybody else will get the extra day.
So then if you say Glass now throws a second game at home, then that probably all makes sense. I think, too, I don't know how much of this might play into it, but I believe the World Series celebration is not the home opener. It's the following night.
I think you're right.
And so maybe they wanted Glass now, a guy who was on the roster, didn't pitch, but a guy who was there throwing that game, maybe.
Yeah, and that's a good question, because it's when the rings are going to be handed out. So I do remember exactly what you were just saying, that it might be game number 2. One other note, just while you look that up, the Dodgers have 3 chunks of 6 games with a day off. So I imagine they're only going to have 5 starters to begin with. You might get a bullpen game, or maybe it's a guy like Kasperius or Robleski that kind of gets a spot start somewhere in there. Otherwise, you'd have 3 guys in the first 3 weeks of the season who would have to make a normal one there. So that's the other news that we have. Were you able to find the Dodgers promotional schedule?
What I searched the first time didn't work, but
it didn't help, huh? Yeah, I can't find it either. So there you go. We'll figure it out. Somebody in the chat, let us know where that one is. The other note, last news and note from spring training this past week: Clayton Kershaw throwing off the mound. Day 2 is the ring ceremony, Lori says. So we were right on that one. Clayton Kershaw throwing off the mound for the first time this spring. Not expected back for a couple months. I was bummed. He was out of camp when I was there. He came back this past week. We'll be traveling to Japan. But even if it's just spring training Camelback Ranch video, Anthony, to see Clayton Kershaw throwing off the mound makes my heart warm. So shout out to Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah. I'm happy you got that. Yeah. I'm as big a Kershaw fan as there is out there. I'm glad that this seems to be going in the right direction for him. I want him to pitch this season. I want him to pitch in the World Series in 2025. I really do.
Yeah.
That I think it would mean a lot for his legacy. I think it would mean a lot for Dodger fans. I think that's a big deal. So, yeah. And you know what? Take your time, bro.
Yeah.
Take your time.
I love the admin in here, by the way, saying, don't you guys mean it's game 4 when the ring ceremony is? This freaking guy. Okay, let's get to some questions. All caps questions. Throw those in the chat. I'll throw one at you. The other conversation we had last time before the Gonsolin injury was who's going to get the final 2 spots in the bullpen. Blake and I kind of narrowed it down to Ben Kasperius, Jack Dreyer, and Justin Robleski as the 3 guys. With Gonsolin out, we both picked Kasperius and Dreyer to get the final 2 spots. Now that Gonsolin is out, I'm curious. A, is it just Robleski, who was the 3rd guy in the conversation we had, who's sort of stretched out a little bit? Or because it's Gonsolin and maybe the long man is out, does a guy like Landon Knack sneak in your estimation, and maybe grab that final spot in the rotation, in the bullpen, whatever?
Yeah. Kasperius is already sort of a shoo-in, right? Like, haven't they already sort of hinted that he's going to be one of the guys?
Blake said lock. I said it's highly likely. I'm not sure it's lock, but Kasperius we both had in, and then we had Dreyer a step down, but still both agreed he was going to get a spot there as well.
Okay. I thought Dave had said something about Kasperius recently.
Maybe he did in the last couple of days, not by the time we had talked on Sunday.
Yeah. Okay. The thing with Knack is that I do wonder if they want him making starts.
Yeah.
That early in the season, where they don't want to rubber band a guy from like stretched out to 2 inning outings to stretch, like maybe they don't want to go back and forth with him that way. And so if that's the case, there you go. Dave said Kasperius is very likely on the roster, which I would assume if he's healthy, he's probably there if Davis said it.
Totally.
So I would say, I would think Wroblewski.
Yeah.
I would think that. And part of the reason is because I think maybe they want Knack to continue to be stretched because he's probably going to have a bigger role in the rotation over the course of the season.
I think the only thing working against Wroblewski is the math on how many lefties they would be comfortable having. You would have Scott, Bonda, Vesia, and Jack Dreyer would all be lefties. So Wroblewski would make a 5th out of 8 relievers. You'd have 5 lefties. That said, a bunch of those guys are nasty enough. And because you have to face 3 batters, I'm not sure it's that big of a deal. Yeah. But there you go. So I think I lean with you, depending on what their plan is. Like, unless they're going with a true 6-man rotation, they've got 3 groups of 6. If they want to just run 6 guys out there at a time, then maybe I'd give the edge to Landon Knack. So there you go. Let's get to some of these questions here. Robert says, biggest takeaway of spring training for you, Anthony?
Sasaki.
Yeah.
It's been Sasaki. It's again, the way he's carried himself, the way the stuff looks, and the fact that I think, because remember when he was throwing in the back on the backfields, and they called it like a hybrid B game or whatever.
Yeah, we were there for that first pitch, home run.
Yeah. There was question on like if he would get the ball in that second game, and I think they saw what they saw in the first start or in the first outing against the Reds, and then probably decided then. And we had said when Matt and I were on after that outing that this feels like he's lining up to make, at the very least, some sort of appearance, if not a start in Japan. And then I think they were waiting for him to come out of this game, and essentially it was a situation where if he comes out and he's healthy, we'll tell everyone that he's going to start in Japan. And I think that was sort of what it was. So I think what the Dodgers have seen also has been impressive enough that they're confident in giving him the ball. He has been, I think, the biggest takeaway for me during these last couple of weeks.
I think for me, I would say on one hand, it's the disappointment that nobody out of Outman, Pages, and Kim just kind of rose up to the level and balled out this spring and just made this decision for them. I was just hopeful that one of the 3 of them would do it. None of them did. So I would say a disappointment. And I just, Freddie Freeman hitting as many home runs as he did with the ankle injury that he's coming back from was encouraging. I thought the young guys, Kasperius, Dreyer, Wroblewski, how good those 3 looked was really encouraging as well. So I pay way more attention to what the young guys are doing than the vets. So that would kind of be my answers there. We got a bunch here and maybe 5 or 10 more minutes. So let's see if we can fire through these. Matthew says, rushing is back to catcher. Is this because the Dodgers see Hope and DePaula on the horizon? What do you think? Him moving back to catcher, is it because that's where they see his future more than outfield?
I think the reports on him have been better than they had been early on with him behind the plate. I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is, they just wonder where the room would be if he had to be a regular outfielder. I don't think they want him to necessarily be that. And I think I think they may, because catching is such a valuable position. And then if you can have an offensive player in there, it's a big win. Like you're gaining strokes on the field, to use a golf term. And so, I think that they may give him more opportunity to be a catcher and see if he can end up handling it. Because eventually Will Smith will move over, right? He'll move over to probably first base or something like that. But I do think that him going back there means they see him there a little more than they did maybe in the recent past. Hope and DePaul, I think, are part of that, but I don't think they're the whole reason why.
Yeah, and I think catching probably is going to require a lot more development on the mental side as well. And so just getting him more reps there, even if the plan is, hey, you're going to catch 60 games a year and you're going to play, 70 games a year in the outfield, if that's like his major league future as soon as next season. Even if you knew that, I think you would still say, let's get this guy as many reps as we can, calling games, behind the plate, etc. So
yeah, and it's going to be easier to adapt the other way than if they gave him a bunch of reps in the outfield and said, hey, we also want you to catch, go back there.
Yep. Eden asks, Bobby Miller, Gavin Stone, River Ryan, who is most likely to spend their entire career with the Dodgers?
Ooh. Entire career. I would say River Ryan.
Yeah, I agree. I think he has the highest upside of the three. And I think the Dodgers are in the business of signing guys who have the potential to be kind of number 1, number 2, number 2.5 type starting pitchers. Gavin Stone would be second. I think Gavin Stone is very, very good. Yeah. And it's no disrespect to him. I just think the upside on River Ryan would be why I'd pick him.
Yeah. And Miller, I don't think there's a guarantee that Miller makes it out of this trade deadline as a Dodger.
There you go. Joseph says, which is more likely, Conforto and Teo both being Silver Slugger level, or one of them being below average? I can't help but worry it's the latter. If you had to pick, both guys are in the Silver Slugger competition for the corner outfields, or one of them is a disappointment. Which of those two scenarios sounds most likely to you?
Most likely is obviously only one of them being at that level and one of them being below average. I will say, though, like this Conforto signing smells a lot like, the Dodgers looking at him and believing they found something that can really help him unlock something new. JD Martinez, Justin Turner,
Oscar Hernandez,
Max Muncy. Yeah, exactly. He feels like the latest in that line of projects. They all have not worked out. Let's be honest here. But the ones who do seem to, they work out for a longer time than most.
Yeah.
So that would be, I don't think it's out of the question. I think it's a good question by Joseph, because I think that is a realistic possibility that they could both be in the running for a Silver Slugger. If you're asking what's more likely, it's probably that one of them falls below expectations.
Yeah. Some people on this show have made some bold predictions about Michael Conforto, and they're positive ones. That's all I'm saying. Laura says, can David Bodie move on from the Dodgers if he chooses to? We don't know. A lot of veteran guys who have proven themselves at the major league level, when they sign minor league deals, they build in some opt-outs. Normally it's not opening day. Normally it's like within a couple weeks of opening day.
Yeah.
That said, I'm not sure David Bodie was quote unquote good enough or a big enough name to justify having one of those clauses in his contract. A guy like Giovanni Gallegos, maybe. But Bodie, who hasn't really done a ton at the major league level, I'm not saying I'd be surprised if he had it, but I wouldn't just assume that he has one of these clauses, Anthony.
No, yeah, I wouldn't either. I mean, he's been okay. He's a below average guy for his career offensively. So again, he's had a great spring and good for him. But it's still spring training numbers. I'm sure at the, what it does is it has the Dodgers really wanting probably him to stay around in the minors at some point, or somewhere, I should say. And then also maybe raises his value. So that way, if they do let him go, he has something to point back to recently and say like, hey, I was performing, I figured some things out, sign me. I think it's that kind of thing. But yeah, I would agree with you. I like for him to try to negotiate like that drop dead date for himself would be, I think, a little, that's a far reach for a guy like him.
Yeah.
So I think maybe he signs with the Dodgers because he thought there was a legitimate chance to make the roster or start in the minors and eventually be called up with the Dodgers.
And just be developed, right? Like he's
developed, right? Because they have that great reputation for being able to develop those kinds of guys. Again, Justin Turner, Max Muncy, Chris Taylor for a long time, like those kinds of guys.
Yeah.
And so if he could turn it around like that, like all those other guys got paid.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And their stories started the same place that his did.
Right.
Peyton says, why did the Dodgers not seem to value long relievers for more than a year? I liked Yarbrough and Honeywell a lot. Their long relief game fit perfectly with the Dodgers strategy. This one's actually really simple, Peyton, and I appreciate the super chat and I appreciate the question. The two guys you mentioned just weren't very good. We love Brent Honeywell. Okay, we love Brent Honeywell, what he did, the bullpen, the outs that he wore at various times. There's a reason nobody signed him so far this offseason. There's a reason he got DFA'd in multiple times last year, including once by the Dodgers, and then cleared waivers and went back to the minors and got called up. And so the Dodgers just have an incredibly high bar for the dudes that are in the major league bullpen, and they want guys who have optionality. Neither of these guys had optionality. So I would say they don't clear the bar of what the Dodgers are hoping for, and they don't have the flexibility to be called up and sent down whenever they want to.
Yeah, and I would also say from a pure talent and ceiling perspective, these guys don't have what the guys that are probably going to be in their bullpen have.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we were even talking about on our last show a guy like Ryan Brazier, and people were like, well, man, the Dodgers should have kept him. I'm like, should they? Like, is Ryan Brazier better than Ben Kasparius or Jack Dreyer? I don't think so. Like, is he better than Justin Robleski? He's right-handed. Like, he's got that going for him. But combination of talent, stuff, optionality, I think it's even with the injuries they've had, I don't think they're necessarily losing sleep over the Ryan Brazier situation. TQT, Outman has a mind-blowing 45% strikeout rate. Pages might need more defensive improvement in center. Why not start Kike until one of the three deserves a promotion? I've been long on the Kike should be the starter kind of a guy. Blake wants to take Dave Roberts at his word when he says that Kike will remain a utility man. I'm skeptical. I remain skeptical, but this is I've argued for this, so I will close my mouth now. But what do you think about Kike just being the everyday guy?
I know glasses Kike is a different animal. And I know you're high on the glasses. I just don't think you want Kike Hernandez as a guy who you give 500-ish plate appearances to.
Yeah.
I think his role, I think we talk about, the Dodgers do talk a lot about putting guys in positions to succeed. I think if you throw Kike out there every day, you're putting him in a position to eventually fail. I don't think he's that kind of player anymore. And I think the role they have him designated for is probably his best role. And if a guy gets hurt and he needs to start more often than not, sure, understandable. But to like call him out on opening day and say this guy's going to be our center fielder or he's going to be our second baseman, whatever, is probably not the best use of who he is. Yeah. And with that said, I think asking for Outman and Pages to quote unquote deserve that promotion, we might be waiting a while if those are the two things that they're trying to improve on.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. Hallelujah. Thoughts on how the Dodgers used the ABS automated balls and strike system in spring training? What restrictions would you put on the players? And for people still crying about the human element, you get check swings, I think is what they're saying. Dave Roberts has kind of indicated that one of the biggest ones is count leverage and kind of size magnitude of the situation. So they don't want guys challenging a pitch up 3-0. Obviously, they don't want guys challenging a pitch, in a 1-2 count with 2 outs and nobody on, that type of a thing. Beyond that, are there other specific rules that you would hope for that the Dodgers would have when it comes to this system? I joked, is there a spot in the lineup where anybody below them doesn't get to use the challenge system?
Yeah. So that was sort of where I was going to go with it. Like if Chris Taylor's out there and he's not performing.
So let me just run through it, Anthony. Obviously, Mookie, Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, clear yeses. They get to use the challenge system. I would include Max Muncy in that group because he has the best eye on the team.
I would include Max. Yeah.
Does Will Smith get to use the challenge system? He's a catcher. He should have a pretty good sense, right?
I would say it goes down to Smith. I would say it goes down to Edman.
Okay, I was gonna Edman Teoscar feels like the line. Like, I mean, because realistically, the Dodgers have a bunch of guys. So you say Edman gets it. Can Teoscar challenge pitches? Can Conforto challenge pitches?
I'd lean no. But I think there are situations for both of those guys too, right? Like Teoscar's an all-star also, right? I think like, okay, here are the optimal counts for you to make this advantageous for yourself, right? And then like those guys got to stick to those. Like if Mookie wants to call an 0-1 challenge, Mookie can call an 0-1 challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, because you also want to save those two for like, Ohtani or Freeman or whoever with like a guy on base.
Yep. Exactly. And that's what it seems like the Dodgers have done. There was a joke that Muncy wasn't allowed to use it. Dave clarified later that was a joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, what they've said is count leverage, situation on the field, those types of things matter. But I sort of do hope, with all due respect to even a guy like Tommy Edman, who's a league average offensive player for his career, like, with all due respect to you, Tommy Edman, if there's a bad strike call against you, we're saving that, because a bad strike call against you is far less significant than a bad strike call against Ohtani or Betts or Freeman or some of those guys at the top of the order. So I think
that matters too. I think I think a healthy Edman for mostly healthy Edman for a full season is a guy who like could legitimately flirt with like 25 homers. So I'm like, yeah, if
his career high is 13, Anthony.
If this gets you out of a hole, but he flashed some pop last season with the Dodgers. I thought he showed.
Yeah, I mean, he was on pace. Yeah, you're fair. If he had 6 home runs in 37 games, so that's 24 home run pace.
And then in the postseason, that power.
Yeah, and he's tied for the league lead in spring training. So maybe that needs to be your bold prediction, Anthony. Is a guy who has a career high of 13 home runs, gets to a number starting with a 2. There you go. I'm writing them for you. Okay, we got a couple more here. I like this one. TQT. Give me a player you have some doubt about. Mine is Vesia. Velocity ticked down last year, is down again this year. Here's why I'm not concerned with Vesia. I just want to say this real quick. Since July of 2023, he got sent down. He came back up. He has the 5th best ERA in Major League Baseball. Alex Vesia does in the last year and a half. So I'm in on Vesia, but I understand. I'm not saying if you've got to pick somebody, I think that's a reasonable one. Is there a guy that's going to be on the opening day roster, Anthony, that you have doubt about? And you're not allowed to say for health reasons. Performance only.
Performance only. Yeah.
I have doubts about Dustin May's ability to stay healthy. It's not an acceptable answer.
I have a guy on each side of the ball. I think I'll say the offensive guy for me is there's slight concern, and that's Teoscar.
Yeah, he was probably going to be mine.
Yeah, I think that he feels right for a little regression, not a ton, but some. I think that he just made the entire league pay a whole lot more attention to him, and we'll see what those adjustments look like on his side. I think maybe the more important one is Blake Treinen.
Oh, my guy.
Yeah, I'm a Blake Treinen fan. I was very, very pleased that they re-signed him.
Never forget Game 5, baby.
Yeah, I wonder what's in the tank still. I think is more than anything for me. And they leaned on him a whole bunch, and they owed it to him to pay him for that. Right. I know we're not in the business of paying guys for past production, but he earned a contract with what he did late in that season and in the playoffs. So I just wonder how much is still there, and if they're going to have to really sort of treat him with kid gloves throughout the summer to make sure that he's got something when it matters.
Yeah, Teoscar, I agree with you. He was going to be mine, not because I think he's going to be bad, but because I think, like you said, slight regression was the language you used, and I totally agree with you. I love Treinen, so you might be right about that, but it won't come out of my mouth on that front. On the pitching side, I mean, I kind of said this one and pissed everybody off a couple months ago, so maybe I'll just go back to the well. Like, if we're talking about a little bit of regression back to the mean, back to the median, back to the norm, like, is a guy like Anthony Bonda, how real is it? We've seen the small sample size. It's also a guy who's been DFA'd 8 or 9 times. He's a great dude. I'm desperately hoping that he's not the guy. But the admin just told on himself, by the way, right here. Because if you know who the Anthony Bonda fanboy is on our staff, you just found out who the admin was. But he would be just the one guy if you force me to pick. And that says way more about the pitching staff and how few question marks I really have than anything else. So there you go.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. That's a really good point. And that sort of speaks to my Treinen pick, in that it's not so much like stuff. It's just like, I hope they don't do that to him again. I hope he doesn't have to be put in that position again. Right. Cause I mean, it ended up being like so many guys were hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Larry asks, over under 25 times you viewed Freeman's Grand Slam. This is a way over for me. Yeah. Yeah, that's got to start with triple digits, Larry. Before then, I'll start.
It was
counting.
way over before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it might have been way over before game 2 started. Okay, I think we got a couple more here. Robert says, any concern, yes or no, on Kirby Yates struggling this spring? Older guy.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
I quoted the stat about Vesia. Tanner Scott is first over that stretch. Kirby Yates is 6th. So they got 3 of the top 6 ERAs over the last 18 months. Cole, real quick, why does it matter if they DFA Taylor? It's not like they're getting money out of him now. I've said this before, and you don't have to love this answer. Part of the reason Taylor's going to stick around is because you need somebody on your 13-person offensive side of things who's just never going to play. Somebody who you're not mad about how little they're developing, somebody who's not going to pout because they never get to play. And yes, Austin Barnes is one of those people, but the guy sitting next to Austin Barnes can't be a young guy that you wish was getting more and more and more reps. Like, wasting that roster spot on Pages or Outman or Kim would be dumb. So that's part of the reason why I think Chris Taylor's sticking around. A, because you're already paying him, and B, you don't really need that spot like every single day anyways.
Yeah, you're not winning or losing a World Series based on that roster spot. Also, I'm going to start a little farther out on this argument, and I'll get back to it. The Dodgers have put themselves in a position as an organization that free agents and guys who are really trying to get back on it, like a Conforto type, to Oscar type, want to be there. They're a destination. And a big part of that is culture, starting with the front office and ownership, willing to spend, making smart decisions, doing right by certain guys when those times come. Clubhouse culture, which we all know about, and it's a huge thing. And part of that is a situation that fans might not want to, they don't care about, but it matters to those other 25 guys who are on the roster at any given time. Chris Taylor's about to have 10 years of service time.
Yeah. And
to DFA a guy right before that hits and that kicks in, that's a big deal for Major League Baseball players. To DFA a guy right before that, you're going to piss a whole bunch of people off in that clubhouse. Because it's not like, maybe Chris Taylor doesn't produce as like we want him to, but he's very well liked in that clubhouse. And guys are rooting for him every time he goes up there. And to do that to a guy who is well liked as Chris Taylor would not sit well in that clubhouse. And that's the kind of thing where they built up enough goodwill that, okay, fine. But like, you don't want that to be getting out that that's how you're now going to treat veteran players and do somebody wrong like that when he's got a year left on his deal.
And I see some people asking, give that spot to Bodie. Why can't Bodie just be the guy who sits there? If you can keep Bodie in the minor leagues and sitting at AAA and not lose him, and keep Chris Taylor on the major league roster and not lose him, then who cares? Like, why? You don't have to mess with that. Neither guy's going to play anyway. So I would add that. Okay, last question. We got one here. Do Jeff and Anthony drink matcha or coffee? I'm not a matcha person. I am iced everything. That's one thing that's maybe one of my terrible pun, not intended, hottest takes is that I don't like hot drinks. It's all iced. Wintertime here, cold here. Give me an iced Americano. Give me a cold brew. It doesn't matter. Always iced, no matter what. But I'm not a matcha person. I don't dislike it. I've never had it and not really interested.
I don't drink either.
Okay. No caffeine?
No, I drink caffeine. It's not that situation. I've never really liked coffee. I've never drank it. And matcha, I'm with you, sort of just doesn't really appeal to me. I'm fine if I never have it for the rest of my life. It might be very good. I don't know. I've never tried it. But yeah, I don't have like a drink that like I need every day.
Yeah. Iced tea. I love unsweetened iced tea is one of my go-tos. I see somebody saying Jeff drinks milk. I can't stand milk. Hate milk. No to hot chocolate. I don't dislike hot chocolate, but again, I just prefer iced drinks. And so, do the math. Hot chocolate doesn't fit into that category. So
yeah, my wife is we're not speaking before I make my coffee.
Your wife is?
My wife's one of those. Yeah.
You make her coffee for her in the morning? Or you got like one of those coffee machines, you just press a button?
Yeah, we have a Keurig. So I won't say I do it every day, but yeah, I do it.
There you go. You're on air. She might not watch this far into the show anyway. You might as well take credit for it.
Yeah, I do it every day. I bring it to her in bed.
There you go. Our routine has become my wife will make like a 4-cup pot of coffee that only she drinks because it's hot. And then what I've started doing because I'm lazy is I wake up before her. So I just go down there and whatever didn't get drank the day before, I just throw it into a cup, pour some ice, a tiny bit of creamer in it, and we're off and running. So I'm like, I don't give a crap about the temperature. We're drinking it cold anyways. So there you go. Yeah, I don't like milk. People are mad about the milk. Whatever. I mean, hot chocolate, that's fine. There's just liars. The admin is just perpetuating lies. And somebody's asking me to reveal Chris Taylor's name, which was not, I'm not going to reveal because it's not mine. There's another gentleman who texted me a nickname for Chris Taylor that I said would get a lot of love on the stream, but I'm not going to be the guy who says it. If that person wants to out themselves and reveal it themselves, they are more than welcome to. It was not Anthony. So we'll just leave it at that. But Jeff's not allowed to. Oh my gosh. Iris says I'm not allowed to make fun of Blake's food choices. Iris, he was asked where he's going to eat in Japan, and the first words out of his mouth were, "There's a Tony Roma's next to our hotel." So the man ordered chicken parmesan for IHOP. He is grandfathered into being made fun of for food opinions, with all due respect. I don't hate cows. Look, I had a quesadilla for dinner. There were nachos involved. There was cheese everywhere in my life. I had pasta with cheese today. Chocolate milk or strawberry. I was a strawberry milk guy. That's the only way my mom could get me to drink milk, was to dump so much sugar in it. And then here we are, and I found out that the milk campaign was a total lie, and drinking milk isn't even really that good for you. So there we go. Another super chat. Jeff, a vegan. Actually, I did go vegan for like a couple months at a time. Jason asks, what happened to Emmett Sheehan? Is he even on the team? Will they even use him? He is coming back from injury. He's a few months out. Around the All-Star break is when he's back. We have an interview that I don't know if it's posted. We're still leaking out our spring training interviews, but we had one with Emmett Sheehan. I can't remember if that one's posted or not. But he's awesome. He's in the mix. He'll be back in a few months, and how they use him will be interesting. But I like Emmett Sheehan a lot. He looked really, really good a couple of years ago before he had injury. All right. That'll do it for us. Thanks to the 1,500 people in here live with us on a Tuesday night. Again, we will be back on Thursday night, I believe is the plan. Matt and I will be in here late, 9:00 show on Thursday night. So if you want to set your calendars for that, March 13th, Matt and I will be here. And then again, March 16th, Sunday, again at 9 p.m., 8:30, 9 p.m. on Sunday, will be Matt and I. And then we'll reveal all sorts of coverage that we got coming at you. I believe we're going to do a Tuesday night show, sort of in between the two games. So 3 a.m. game, and then we'll do a show later that night, kind of recapping it. Probably Anthony and I, just because that's our normal night. So stay tuned for details about that. But enjoy the rest of your night, everyone. That's Anthony Witrado. I'm Jeff Spiegel. Please subscribe, ring the notification bell. Check out DodgerBlue.com. Check out the podcast, Apple, Spotify, Google, Dodger Blue 1958, everywhere on social media. Adios. Go Dodgers. And yes, still champs.